chat's trying to connect. Still not connecting, and I'm willing to bet it didn't fix it.
It's working.
Oh, it's working. Sorry.
Yeah, it's
All right.
working.
But I just don't get to have chat apparently. So
Oh,
it's fine. I can use chat on here. So welcome back to A Real Study, episode 3. With us tonight is myself, Mr. Snidbits. I've got Mr. Marvelite, and of course, we've got all the movie things. And we are going to be discussing. Let's move back over the poster wall so we can have this all in one cut. Jojo Rabbit, Promising Young Woman, and Why the Last Man.
Good evening and welcome.
I'm just going to jack everything up tonight because if we are going to have problems, we might as well have them all. Get them out of the way, right? That's the way I look at it. So, that being said, why don't we get right into Jojo Rabbit, which this was my first time viewing the film. And how about you guys?
This was a movie that I wanted to see, but I had not. It's interesting for me. I get leery about any movie that kind of takes that era and jokes with it. Like you have the producers, and I'm okay with the producers because I think the whole it was around that era, and the movie takes place in the era, and for them to go back and make a joke of it at that time, it was considered fresh for the producers, I guess. But then you have this movie where you've got Taika Waititi like depicting Hitler and making him like a funny character, which I guess it's the same thing. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, you have to remember it's a 12-year-old boy's version of Hitler.
Yeah,
that he sees in his mind. That's kind of what Taika has talked about. Is like he's not actually depicting a historical version of Hitler. He's depicting this little boy's imaginary friend version of him.
It's why he talks tough to him too, because he'll constantly be like, "You're 10, get it together." Like, what, dude? Yeah. I'm 10. Don't be telling me
his buddy.
And some of the dialogue, like especially when he gets angry with Jojo, is literally part of the propaganda that was, the speeches that he gave.
Right. Mm-hmm. No, I thought that Taika, this was his standout for me. As much as everybody knows that Ragnarok is not my favorite film in the Marvel universe, he's still a brilliant filmmaker, and I can see that with this film especially. This film blindsided me because it advertises itself as a comedy, and Taika Waititi is known for being a comedian and known for a lot of wry humor. So I was like, all right, this is, this will be fun. Yeah. This movie rocked my world. Kicked me in the chest, if you will, when you get to the heavy parts. And being that I should have known. I mean, like you said, the producers took it light all the way to the end. It was always funny. It's Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks doesn't let up and get real for a minute. And if he does, he doesn't put his name on it.
Right.
This doesn't do that. This is fun and funny and ridiculous until you realize that it's just not. The movie combined with the movie The Wave really hammers home, hey, here's how they did it. I like that, Captain. And this is a Captain Salty Dog redemption, by the way. So all the movie things. What's your initial take on maybe this viewing, or what even go back to your first viewing of Jojo Rabbit and just what you thought of the film overall?
I was really I've been following this film for a while. Taika had been working on this film for maybe a decade before it finally was made. And I had first heard the announcement, and I was locked in right away from the time I heard the announcement about it. And I saw this in the theater right away, and I saw it two or three more times after that. So I really love this film. It was one of my favorite films of that year. And I mean, I'm familiar with a lot of Taika's other stuff, and it kind of goes along with a lot of his other stuff. He does have he does play with a lot of the same themes as he does in this film. And if you've seen any of his other stuff prior to Ragnarok, it seems like a lot of people know the popular version of Taika. A lot of people know him from Ragnarok, but He's done all these great films in New Zealand, and they all, for the most part, deal with a lot of the same themes. And there is some heavy aspects to a lot of his other comedies. Um, and like I kind of referenced the film Boy. If you've not seen Boy, you got to see that film. It's really incredible. Kind of deals with a lot of the same stuff of like father son relationships. Even his short film that he was, I think he won the Academy Award for. It's a black and white film, and it kind of deals with a lot of the same kind of themes. Kind of kids being like kind of on their own in a way, which JoJo very much kind of was in this film. Um, yeah, I can't say enough about it. I could talk about this film for this whole show, really. I mean, that and Promising Young Woman. I mean, it's incredible, and like, and yeah, that reveal that I think we all kind of allude to really hits. I mean, it definitely.
I had to
Definitely
pause
did
the
not see
movie.
that coming. Right? Yeah, yeah.
I
It's.
did.
I know it's
Death
incredible.
hits
So
different for me now after my father's death, as well as having kids. Those two things kind of
oh yeah.
added
Hmm.
together make me view death in a very different way. And
Yeah.
we are getting to spoiler territory, but that's okay. This is a spoiler-filled show if you haven't noticed already. Um, Muncie, welcome, welcome, and welcome Ray, and welcome. Disparaging Ragnarok. I didn't say her say that. Yeah, it's not that I don't think it's a beautiful film or that it's just not. I don't know. It doesn't hit for me. So, Mr. Marvelite, give me some more of your thoughts, initial thoughts on Jojo Rabbit, since you were looking forward to seeing this film and also saw it for the first time.
Yeah, so there's a lot of movies that I look forward to seeing or I want to see, but for whatever reason, I don't get around to seeing them, and this episode gave me a reason to do so. It I find sometimes when it comes into heavy topics like both of our movies this evening are like thankfully I went into Promising Young Woman not knowing anything about the film. I tried not to know
Mm.
anything at all,
That's good.
which messed me up even worse after But with Jojo Rabbit, I think it was marketed as a humor, as a funny movie, in a lot of ways. But if you really think about it, there is this underlying tone of how terrible things really were in Germany, and you have this 12-year-old boy who has been radicalized and is a fanatic of an organization he knows nothing about, other than what he's been brought to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And the relationship between him and the girl, um and how he begins to, and it's not so much of like this love story, it's more of this child trying to understand how to better hate someone, ends up finding that he doesn't, and he's struggling with that underlying, there's a guilt for not turning her in, there is a guilt for wanting to hurt her. He intentionally writes a letter in the story for her, trying to be a letter to hurt her feelings, basically saying that her fiance hates her and doesn't want anything to do with
Yeah.
her. And as soon as she responds in the way that he intended, he then immediately feels guilty and rewrites a letter saying, I didn't mean any of that. And the 12-year-old little boy that thinks that he's really getting one up on somebody, um you know and that he knows better, and the engagement and with Scarlett Johansson as his mother, I thought she did a fantastic job in this film. You
Agreed.
get this like this there's so much sorrow with his mother, but she's guising it with being positive and like trying to be humorous and trying to help him see the world for what it really can be, not what he's been radicalized into. And to see where he is even struggling with his mother, and she has to be careful because technically he's the enemy. And it was something that hit like it's there was also a reference in there to like the movie, not so much the movie Valkyrie, but that story that happened where he let people, like Hitler said basically that he let people think that he was dead, but really he just had bulletproof legs and stuff like that. And you have this kid who is, is so focused. I've never really seen a movie to show that part of World War II. You never see the part where how basically the Nazis, weaponize the children, and it's the first time, but you're seeing it from this kid's perspective. So it hit me a lot, and there is a part in this. We're saying spoiler, but we're all like dancing around the topic. So I'm not going to say it. I'll let one of you all say it.
Well, and we can put the spoiler alert up. Like I said, we have a brand new spoiler alert. Thank you to Captain Salty Dog for the new kind of sleeker looking spoiler alert. Although I did get a compliment on the big pink spoiler alert, which we can bring back for fun times. But you've noticed the cartoons have disappeared. We can bring them back too if we want, but not right now. This movie reminded me of. Because in high school in the 90s, because I was in high school from 91 to 95, this was something that we were taught a lot about. The Holocaust, World War II was a heavy part of our history throughout school. And we had to read Night. I don't know if you guys have ever read that book, but it is exceptionally heavy. And I feel like Taika might have read that book at one point, because it definitely took tones and concepts that are heavy from that story and many other stories from that era, and pieced them perfectly together with enough humor that you could stomach it without walking out like you do at the end of Schindler's List, where you just want to go to a shower and kind of like rock and sit, in the shower, which is good. We all do experience that, but not every time we explore these topics. And so I did appreciate that I could get up and still function after this film. Other than that one part, other than the part. And I didn't say it either. I didn't want to say it either. I think I'm going to let Brian say it, because I don't think I want to say it either. Anyway,
He doesn't want to say it.
he doesn't. We don't want to put this spoiler out there. No, not really.
I know.
I will put the spoiler.
Honestly, I think it's
up.
the one thing we shouldn't say. Let's just say it that way.
Put the alert
because
up.
if anybody sees this is the one thing that they probably don't need to be spoiled on. Like that would be like us talking about how there's all of this cool stuff in Infinity. I hate it comparing this to Infinity War, but like you don't tell people about the snap. You just let that not happen.
Right.
I feel like
this is telling somebody what's in the box.
If someone would have told me what happened, like we were chatting on Discord as we were either watching the films or and it was we kind of like stepped around the topic, and so I was prepared for something to hit me, but I was not prepared for that to hit me. Right. I don't think that we would do our viewers a justice by giving them the opportunity, if they have not seen this film, to go into that organically and feel that. I would hate to rob them from that. It's not like a spoiler for like a comic book movie. I mean, it's like the Schindler's List. It's like all these films that had these rocking moments where we would ruin that for someone. I just don't.
It just has such an emotional impact.
Yeah,
agreed.
Film. Yeah.
If I have to suffer, everybody else does too.
We can avoid it. That's fine. I have no problem. I'm perfectly capable of discussing things without discussing them. Can we talk about Sam Rockwell for a
I was
moment?
literally just going to say that. Yeah, Sam Rockwell.
He's always a standout. He's amazing.
He's so good
in everything. And in this, I never thought I'd like a Nazi. But if there was a Nazi I was going to like, it'd be this one.
Man.
You know what I mean?
Well, I love how they kind of like hint at like like these like flamboyant things that he has.
Yes. him and his captain or whatever.
Goes,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And then he just like goes all in at the end. Like
I loved that outfit.
So good.
I was
yeah.
But at that point, you could tell.
Dynamics.
Yeah, that point, you could tell the film was still from from Jojo's perspective. This was his perception of how these people were at 12 through the whole film. that's how you get away with it. That's how you can get so ridiculous and it still makes sense.
Okay,
At least from a child's view. Anyway,
my wife is in the chat. I have to say this. When we first started the film and there was that first scene where he's in the glasses and the hat, my wife thought he was Bruce Willis. And I'm like, how are you watching the same movie am I? Like she had her glasses on, but she thought, I'm like, dude, I'm like, I couldn't think of Sam Rockwell's name at the moment. I'm like, that's Justin Hammer. Like that's not Bruce Willis.
that's Zaphod Beeblebrox. Come on.
Oh my goodness.
I love Zaphod.
So long and thanks for all the fish.
That's a serious set of films that should have been made. That's talk about a series of films that should be redone. Anyway, Sam Rockwell wasn't even in this movie very much. Like I swear, what he had like maybe 20 minutes of screen time, maybe 25, maybe 20, like not much, but he carried every scene with him. Not that everybody else didn't. Like you guys were saying, ScarJo did a fantabulous job. I was not completely with it. Hi, Mrs. Marvelite.
Oh yeah, Cowgirl's my wife.
No, hi, Mr. Marvelite. I love you.
No, she's my wife.
Oh, Mrs. Marvelite. Okay, I didn't see that S. Just wanted to double check. Okay, I was like, wait, you've got a secret admirer. All right, not so secret. It's your wife. So Jojo Rabbit. Oh man, if we can't talk about that, it kind of okay. Can we talk about the relationship maybe between him and the girl as they grew to know each other? Because things did go further, and there were some shocking moments between them even that I thought are worthy of discussing. Besides the letter, because he kept doing the letters, which I thought were great, but the fact that she was willing to give him all these false reports about Jewish people in order to help inflammate,
make his like manual,
right?
Yeah,
which ultimately saves both of them, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think some of that is like, I think deep down, like his mother's influence on him is really what it kind of was like an underlying guide for him. Like, yeah, he really wanted to be part of this, like, group. I think it's like if you like pull back on the whole thing and just take away the detail that it's like this Nazi kind of group, it's like he wants to be part of this crowd. He wants to be accepted,
right?
Part of this crowd, but there's this opposing force, and I think the reason he feels guilt and all these other things about the things he's doing towards this young girl is that that's his mom talking to him. He's got like the imaginary Hitler in his mind, but then he's got his mom's influence too. It was kind of right there in the forefront, and I think that's what's speaking to his relationship, or his growing relationship with the young girl.
I like it. Do you think that their age difference had any impact on their relationship? Because I swear she was at least a couple of years, if not several years older than him.
Yeah.
So she would have probably been, 17 while he was 12?
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt that way, yeah.
It's just a guess.
I don't know if that, I don't think, they didn't feel like there was any kind of like, I didn't get any like weird sense or like any kind of negative feelings towards their age difference. They didn't really like, it didn't really impact anything how I felt about where they were going with it. So
no,
I didn't feel like there was like a romantic thing.
No, me either. But it did. It impacted her ability to play on his naivety.
Oh yeah,
completely.
Yeah. I mean, she's going through a completely different thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
yeah,
I think she felt safe too in that environment, being able to, which is what helped her to kind of be able to do that. Her mom, or Jojo's mom, made her feel pretty welcome and safe there. And so I think she felt a little more, confidence in kind of messing with him and jabbing him a little bit here and there. Just kind of going along with his thing.
I also have to have the, I'm going to say this, like with that relationship, it was, you have this entire like community, and you have this Nazi party, this club, as his mother like so properly like he wanted to be a part of a club that did not care about their own people. They cared about their agenda, and they had fed these false narratives down these kids' throats, and they believed these things. And I think she played on those prejudices to protect herself because it made him fear her. But then as they grew their relationship, he he admits later he falls in love with her, but he knows that that's not going to happen, that she probably looks at him more like a little brother. But they're built that almost like a familial bond of protection, because he agreed to not turn her in for the sake of protecting his mother, but then later on it became a point of protecting her.
Right.
So you have this thing where he's made to believe that he hates these things, and that's where you kind of start seeing the imaginary Hitler start losing grip with him, and at first starts trying to plead with him, and then all of a sudden starts like ordering him.
Yeah.
And as he builds a bond with the girl, he's losing that bond with the fake Fuhrer.
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
it's definitely one of those things where he had to break past. And I think it's a good story, and I think it's important, not just because of understanding that era and what happened, because we should never forget the atrocities of the past, or else we're bound to repeat them. But a lot of this stuff happens even nowadays, and I hate trying to say that, because a lot of times you hear people saying like Gina Serrano or whoever else, like comparing events of today to like Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
But when you have a group of individuals that are radicalizing young people and trying to make them do certain things, it's very similar. And it's not the government is like like the Nazis. It's when you have a radicalized way of thinking, what do you expect your children are going to do? And we're living in a day and time where there's a lot of radicalized viewpoints, and it's almost as if the government is not doing like the Nazis are doing. The families are now radicalizing their children.
Right, on their own.
And exactly. So it's very much a story that's appropriate for even today.
I think the club
Yeah,
is
for
the
sure.
big thing. So like that you both mentioned this group, this club. That club still exists today. The exact same club, unfortunately. It's just morphed and changed, and now it's found its way
Yeah,
to
it's a little
be to
more
other countries
subtle
and bigger.
mhm.
It's subtle but also direct because of all of the internet. Imagine how well the Nazis could have done if they had the internet. That's frightening.
Right.
Because they were motivated on point, and they probably would have had hackers, and you could just imagine a modern day Third Reich would be frightening. Let's say I don't think we're necessarily there. I just think, like you said, it's groups, individuals, but they're not coalesced enough. There's no.
Mhm.
We'll see. This is getting heavy.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
I think
There's one thing. Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, please.
no, I go ahead.
I was just going to mention there's this thing in storytelling that I noticed in this. I would kind of go back to Collateral as a very similar thing between Tom Cruise's character and Jamie Foxx, where they both start at different points, and they kind of like form this X where like as referencing Taika's character and then Jojo Rabbit, they kind of like have this progression. Taika's character ends up going down and changing into a negative way, while Jojo Rabbit's progressing up and changing. And they're polar opposites. They eventually become polar opposites of each other, and there's always like a midpoint where you can kind of pinpoint where that kind of happens. So I felt like they did a great way of showing that in this film as well.
I like that. Marvelette, you were going to say something.
Well, no, I completely forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry, sir.
I know, actually. I think the thing that struck me, so at the end of the movie, there's this battle that takes place, and I think what's interesting is you have all of these characters who they're talking about how the basically the war has already been lost, but they're now, Germany is now being invaded. These individuals are now fighting to to somehow recover because they think that Hitler is going to, you know, rally everyone together to, you know, even though they're losing, they're going to win still. And you have that last battle, and I was so angry, even though I knew at this point it was just like all, I mean, it was all ridiculous, but at the same time, I see where this could have happened, where like she had the grenade on the back of the kid and she pulls the pin and she tells him to run toward the army. Like you have these moments where
Yeah.
they're like handing things to people and just going to make them fight. Like they just did not care what they were doing to those people that, you know, had supported them this whole time with money, with food, with, you know, their metal. I mean, you see these kids this whole time up until the battle, they're going around collecting for the war effort, you know, and at the
Yeah.
same time, all of those people are then dead later on.
Yeah.
And it was very sobering. Like, you know, I think I'm gonna go back to a phrase that was said in Captain America: The First Avenger, when you didn't know, not a lot of people realize that the first country that the Nazis invaded was Germany, and you see that with these people that there are people that don't like it. Those people that are dissenting are hung. You know, they kind of slowly reference the trains to the camps, but they didn't really go there. That
At
was
one
more
point,
of
she
what was
specifically
happening.
says, "My parents were put on
Yeah,
the
there was
trains."
that reference there
Mhm.
where she said they went on a train and you don't come back from that. And you know, that wasn't the story that they were trying to tell. They weren't doing a concentration
Right.
camp story.
Yeah.
This was very much the German citizens. You know, the
Mhm.
girl was the plot piece to see Jojo develop.
Yeah.
And this was very much a story about the German people and what they were, how they were during this time. And I it really affected me, just kind of understanding, you know, the people who suffered, you know, of course, you know, the Jewish people suffered the most out of World War II. But then you also forget, you know, that there are a lot of Germans that did as well. And,
Mhm.
you know, understanding, you know, what they did and, you know, how they had to try to even recover from that. And of course, and this is an impoverished, you know, town. This was not a high class town.
Right.
You know, after World War II, they actually had to take a lot of the higher class Germans and ferry them to the concentration camps for them to understand. And a lot of them were going like they were going on a tour. They were happy, they were laughing. It wasn't until they walked through the concentration camps and it was explained what happened, that was when they became somber and sober
Yeah.
and were upset. And you know, they weren't the ones affected. It was the lower class people.
which is true in almost all war.
Yeah.
Very few wars are the poor not affected. This movie definitely has a lot of commentary on a lot of that. I think the stuff about the kids with backpacks, as Salty Dog said, that kind of stuff still happens today. Not backpacks, but the grenades. Sorry, but he referenced backpacks. Um, I would say that some of that is also just talking about war at the time in general, because the Russians were notorious for that. They would send you out, and if you ran back, they'd gun you down, even though they were fighting against the Germans. So the whole thing was nasty. So there was a bit of a commentary on war, a commentary on propaganda and indoctrination, without a doubt. I mean, that's what the whole story is about, and how that can take you. And then other sub stories that I don't want to get into because of things. So,
I do have to mention,
please.
going back to just kind of taking it back onto a lighter note in the actual film. We talked about some of these standout, like Sam Rockwell's character.
Mm.
Other people that stood out for me too was like, with just the little time that they had, it made such a big impact. Like Rebel Wilson,
Oh yes.
even even like knocked it out of the park for me. And then also like Archie Yates, who played his like little friend.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
kid, like,
Oh
how do
my
you?
goodness,
I mean,
yes.
absolutely love that little dude. Like, yeah, he's so amazing. I mean,
He
every
was the
time he come
voice
on
of
the screen,
reason.
you can't help but, yeah,
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 he was
Yeah.
radicalized, but
so
yeah, he's like,
funny.
yo, it's not a big deal. She's Jewish,
Yeah,
so what?
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
bigger problems in
I
the
think
war.
he knew that
Yeah,
he was
he's
supposed to
so
just do what
funny.
he's supposed to do because of God and country and all that. But then
Hmm.
he was smart enough to know what was going on. But if he stepped out of line, he knew what would happen too. He was just like, I'm going to go
Yeah,
along with it. And this is what I mean about the way the advertisement happened. The whole rocket launcher scene with the kid is in the preview, and it made me laugh in the preview.
Right.
And in this, I was like, "Oh shit!" Like it was not a funny moment in the movie so much, a little bit, but that was during some pretty traumatic and real stuff. While JoJo's just bewildered, and looking around.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I thought the scene with him and Rockwell when he takes the jacket off of him, wow! Like
Yeah.
I was blubbering at that point. So, yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that was an appropriate way of saying that without too much, I hope. Tell me if I ever go too far, y'all. You can tell me.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a hard movie to talk about because there are things I want to say that are about things.
And Rare will just say Rare Woo Ray Woo.
Rachel.
Ray,
Yeah.
yeah.
Rachel.
I'm terrible with names. So just so you know, it is a sad movie. There are some very sad points there. I would say it's more like a punch in the stomach at certain moments.
Yeah, I say
But
there's like some heavy moments, but yeah.
but it is there are enough light moments to kind of make it palatable.
Right.
Just the heavy gear training in the pool, one of my favorite scenes. There's just like the communication. Jojo Rabbit's mom, she is hilarious, and a lot of,
Mhm.
I mean, Scarlett Johansson does a great job in this. I mean, just I
Yeah.
loved her in this.
I loved her in the beard. I think that was a great scene.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was emotional, but it was like funny at the same time.
Mhm.
You could tell she was a good mom from that scene. Like she was a good
Exactly.
mom.
Yep.
Sorry.
And like even the weird stuff, like I mean, it's if you've been on TikTok, you'll see certain parts, but like even the circumstances of like JoJo being scarred, like it's kind of funny. It's
It is
terrible,
funny.
but the way they
Mhm.
handle it is kind of funny, and the fact that like throughout the entire movie, because he has scars on his face, like everyone admits that he's ugly, and it's just like a common thing. Like nobody's holding back. Like, do I look ugly?
Yeah.
And they're like, yes, you look ugly.
Frankenstein.
Or
Yeah.
Call him.
or what was it? The Gestapo was like, it is such a good thing that you're working toward the effort, being so hideously disfigured as you are.
Right.
And it was just like the German, like the German like straightness, like
Oh my
they're being
God.
serious, but it's funny at the same time. So
Mhm. That whole
yeah.
scene where they come in to his house and like everyone's like constantly like
Okay, so
piling into
so
him.
here's the thing. I immediately thought
Oh my
back
God,
to
I'm so
to Spies Like Us, to the doctor scene, right? It was making fun. It was like Taika going, "Oh, the
man,
doctor
it's so
scene,"
good.
because it's the doctor scene, but with Heil Hitler's. Like it's
Yeah.
so funny. Like, and at first you're like, "Oh, this is cringy." It's so cringy, you have to start laughing. Like it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think
Captain
it was
Salty Dog,
cringy at all. I thought it was amazing. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, I felt like I know it feels like we're talking about like a lot of the heavy stuff, but it's really well balanced. I
Yeah.
mean,
It
I
is.
was like laughing through the whole thing, and Taika, this is just a testament to his storytelling and like his pacing and how he's able to time things just right. He knows when to hit you with those moments,
It does.
and then have some breathing room and let's have some more laughs, and kind of like, yeah. So I just felt like it was a really well balanced film.
Stephen
Yeah, but they
Merchant.
screech the brakes sometimes. Like it's funny, and then all of a sudden it's terrifying, and
Mhm.
he really pumps the brakes hard.
Yeah.
Stephen Merchant as the head Gestapo
Yeah.
was perfect.
Yeah. I mean,
His humor,
perfect casting.
he doesn't have to do much to make me laugh. He can just be.
No.
And if they were ever to get a cast the Addams
He's
Family
so
live
good.
action again, he needs to play Lurch, but that's just me.
Oh my goodness!
I can totally see
Now
that.
that's gonna be stuck with that in my head.
Sorry.
They have to give him more lines though.
They
I
do,
feel.
and he has to have
Yeah.
a little bit of that Stephen Merchant kind of thing going. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just me.
A little smarter Lurch.
The casting in this is brilliant. Even Alfie Allen, and yes, I am cheating by looking because I'm terrible at names, so I'm doing it. Who was best well known for Game of Thrones as well as John Wick, is also fantastic. He's got like 3 lines in the whole film, I think. Like no lines in this whole film, and yet he's memorable as Sam Rockwell's second, and I love it. I just think it's great. Great cast. And again, trying to talk about the humor side because it is funny. It will make you giggle. And I
Yeah.
think giggle's a good word. I think it'll make
loved
you
it.
giggle.
Yeah.
So why don't we rate it? It was a pick by Captain Salty Dog. So who would like to rate it first? Okay.
I'll start us off.
Sweet.
Yeah, like I said, I can't say enough about this film. It's definitely one that I'll continue to rewatch. And yeah, like so just the first off the initial rating, I mean, I'm kind of like with Lala where I don't like to give movies a 10, but this is for me it's pretty close to a 10. It's like a 9.7, 9.8. And I think I would have liked it when I was a 12-year-old, you know. I probably wouldn't have like picked up on too many of like the subtleties in it, but I probably would have given it an 8 as a kid. But yeah, like I can't recommend it enough. I don't. I have a hard time trying to like pick out flaws for this film. Um, Taika did an incredible job. I mean, he's worked really hard. He worked really hard for this film. Um, I think part of it is owed to Ragnarok because of the success of Ragnarok. People were able to like easily jump on this film, you know, because it became a household name, and I think it would have taken him longer to make this film. But I definitely recommend watching all of his other films, and you'll see a lot of the same themes in here that are in Jojo Rabbit. But yeah, please watch this movie. So.
I like it. Mr. Marvelite.
So it's definitely different than Ragnarok. In my mind, I think the movie that kind of jumped in my opinion that I've seen from him was Hunt of the Wilder People. Where it had serious tones, but then it also had that humor to it in some cases. And it would definitely punch you in the gut. And I think I would definitely give it a 9. At least it's a very strong 9. And as a young person, I think the only problem with this is as a 12-year-old, I probably would not have taken it as seriously as it deserved to be because it's a very touchy topic. And if you don't come in the right headspace, you may think of it as making light of it in a way that could be negative. Um, so I don't know. I struggled to watch these kind of movies as a young person, mainly because just like Snippets, I a lot of like the education system was going through this. I live close enough to DC where I have made multiple trips to the Holocaust Museum, and that point has always been touched on. But it's only been as of recent when people are really talking about like you had Valkyrie with Tom Cruise that came out not too long ago. You've had some other movies like that with I think Liv Schreiber I think did a movie, and you have some movies about that era that are not necessarily about the Jewish people, but um, I don't know. I don't know how I would have felt about this as a 12-year-old. It was not really something that I would have watched. I probably would have waited to watch till I was older, because I remember when Schindler's List came out, I just avoided it, not because I was afraid of the topic. It was more of I didn't think I was like maturity wise, I was ready for that, and so I waited until I was a little bit older for that. So I really don't know how I would give it as a rating as a 12-year-old, because I don't think I would have watched it as a 12-year-old for that reason. So hope that helps.
That's fair. No, that's a fair take. Because it is a heavy movie. I know it's funny, but it's also heavy. You see the cover of the movie, and you may not run to see it. At 12, sorry,
we're talking about like it being like a heavy movie.
It's not. But again,
I didn't see it as that heavy. Like it's not like Schindler's List.
No.
Right,
And I said that, and I
like,
agree.
Yeah.
But from my 12-year-old's perspective, where I was digging on Star Wars and Ghostbusters, this is heavier than the stuff I was palatable for at the time, and that's all I think Marvelite's trying to say as well.
Yeah, I'm not hating on the movie. I thought the movie was great, and I think to get a good understanding of what was going on, it's a great lighter depiction of it without going too deep and too dark. Without
it's
it
a
sounding like
dramedy.
some type of end times movie.
Totally a dramedy.
Yeah, but I just don't. I think there's a lot of people who struggle with the maturity at 12 years old that probably would not be ready for this type of film.
And I
It's
don't
not
think I
because they
would.
wouldn't be able to handle it. It's
At
just
14
I
or
don't think they would have
15,
gone in with the proper mentality.
right. By the time I was 15, I probably would have. But at 12, I probably would have tried to skip this movie, or my parents would have made me watch it, and I would have laughed at a lot of the kid jokes. But I might have misunderstood it. I'll be honest. I might have. I don't know. It's hard to think back and put that kind of reflection on these kinds of films. You put a comic book movie in front of me, and my 12-year-old self goes, "Woo!" Probably because I'm still riding on that kid love of those kinds of films. So it is harder to go back. But Brian, I know how much you love film and have been your whole life. Has been obsessed with film. I'm probably on a pretty deep level. So that makes sense to me. If I had watched it, I'm sure I would have gotten it. Probably would have given it a solid 7 because I would have been like, oh, it's probably important, but I would have come back and explored it again later. And I did that with a lot of movies. Right. Close Encounters is a good example. Okay. So Close Encounters is at the same age as me. And that movie has some pretty heavy tones and some pretty heavy things, but it's also lighthearted in parts and funny. So it's not the same elements, but it's still a dramedy in a lot of ways. Right. So when I was a kid, I thought that movie was okay. It was interesting and there were some freaky moments, but then when I grew up, when I even became 16, 17, 18, I fell in love with that movie. So I think that this would have been that kind of movie where I would have kind of shunned it and then fallen in love with it as I got into my 20s. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
So 7 working its way to a 9.5 now. That's the way I'm going to put it. There we go. With that said, we're going to move on to Promising Young Woman, which is a movie you can watch right now on HBO Max. It just started yesterday, I think, being on there. It just dropped on their full release. It's not like a theater release. It's already been in and out of theaters. But this was one that was coming available, and I knew that either we hadn't seen it, most of us, and I think Lala was pretty excited about it as well. It's a shame she can't be here to talk about it, but... and we did enjoy it. Thank you for choosing that one, Captain Salty Dog. We really did enjoy Jojo Rabbit. So thank you. It was on my radar. I just hadn't. So you helped me get over the edge on that one. So thank you for that. Promising Young Woman is a different kind of movie. Another heavy topic. Why not just get them all out on one night? Right. This topic,
before Halloween.
This topic is all about consent and pushing the lines of consent, as well as
it's a lot,
as well as trauma. There's so much to this film, but yeah, those are some of the bigger themes. Without getting too far into the film, it is there are dark comedy moments in the film. But I would say overall, this is not meant to be anything more than a cautionary tale, possibly. That's just one approach to it. I'm sure we're going to unravel this as we go. Anyway, Promising Young Woman stars Beau Burnham, as well as Carey Mulligan and Allison. Well, those are the 2 stars. Everybody else is kind of co-star as far as...
It has a great supporting cast for sure.
It really does.
No,
Clancy Brown.
Comedy-related individuals.
Oh, yeah.
But people you could tell wanted to take on moments in this movie to illustrate the importance of, I think, what this film is trying to say. And this film has a lot to say about the current status of the way women are approached in this world. The ironic part is there are going to be 3 dudes talking about this. And that's a little odd. Because what we say, it matters, but we're not going to get the perspective that I think maybe we should on a film like this. But we're going to do this anyway, because here we are.
And I hope you don't mind if I jump in here real quick, snippets.
No, please.
But just for those of you, because I realized something after we did another film. Just as a reminder, if you maybe feel like you're triggered from the topics of sexual assault or rape or anything like that. Please be advised. This movie is definitely touching on that subject, and it's unavoidable at that point. So we understand. We'd love for you to be here, but if that's something that would make you feel uncomfortable and maybe, in a personal experience or anything, it brings something up, we do not want you to feel uncomfortable. And so I wanted to say that now, that way you have a chance to maybe bow out.
Right.
Thank you.
Because as much as we love talking movies with everyone, you know, we don't want to cause anyone to have any type of distress from what we're going to be discussing. So
We should be a
just
safe place
out
for
there.
people come and hang out and enjoy and talk about movies. So thank you for
Right.
that. That's a big gesture, and I didn't mean to skip it. But that's why I like to talk about what these movies talk about before we get into the heavy ones. The not so heavy ones, we can do whatever. Mr. Marmalite, you walked into this movie blind.
Very.
Let's just get your initial impression of the film.
Okay, so the only thing that I knew about this film was the rating. And I was like trying to look into it. And honestly, I feel like the way that it was rated was almost misleading if you didn't know anything about the film, because I literally watched this with my wife. That way, if I felt uncomfortable watching certain things, I could walk out of the room, because I do get high anxiety with moments of, distress or severe well, honestly, I even stressed out during 27 Dresses. So, it depends on what I can watch. So this movie was nothing that I expected it to be. Um, I expected either one of two things. This was going to be about the dealing with the aftermath of a person that has been assaulted, or it was a movie about like this, almost like this ultimate revenge type film where, the people were getting, either killed or whatnot for what
Mhm.
they had done to this person. And it was a little bit of here and there, but I never expected the main character to be the way that she was. Um, so I mean, understand, guys, if you haven't watched this film, it's not for everybody. Again, but we have this character, Cassandra, who had a friend, Nina, who had been assaulted, and you don't know anything specifically about the event that took place, and it's only pieced together throughout the film that you kind of have an understanding about it. But the thing that threw me off was the fact that she would go to nightclubs or places and act like she was intoxicated, to the point of where these quote unquote nice guys would try to help her go home, but then end up leading her to her house, their house, to try to take advantage of her. But she wasn't drunk, she wasn't intoxicated, and she was using this as an opportunity to confront these people. And I her life was consumed. It was almost be like in my mindset of like a female Batman. Like her life was consumed in
Hmm.
making people pay for something that happened to someone else. Because you have Bruce Wayne, his parents were killed, and so what does he do? He goes and he has this code where he doesn't kill, but he goes and he makes, he fights crime going on. She had a friend who you don't ultimately know like what happened. You can only assume what really happened at the end for this person. um and she is going out at night and making people pay, and you discover that she has this type of code that she is holding to, that I found extremely like refreshing in a sense, with how she was approaching and addressing people. um and it was very creative. It was something I hadn't seen before. I was expecting her to kill people. That's just what I thought. Like I just thought it was that kind of. I thought it was like a Death Wish type thing,
Well,
and it
that's what the
wasn't.
preview alludes to.
Yeah, and it wasn't. It was so much better.
It is
And
better.
the way, and I thought of it this way. It's like, I can never understand the fear that a woman would have to go through when people do not believe her. And I would never want to be an individual that would contribute to the stressor of an anxiety of a person that had been harassed or assaulted, um, because I have my presupposed, interpretations. But these people were very open and upfront about how they believed about things, and what she did to change their minds, or what she did to make them confront what her friend had to go through, was very diabolical in a sense, and I loved it. I
And
I, I loved
untraceable.
how she, yes, but she also there was like a line that she didn't cross.
Right. No, it looked like she
Totally.
was going
Yeah.
to.
That was the great thing about it, was like you could almost look at her and be like, oh my god, she's a terrible person, but she definitely does not cross that line. So you're like, okay, like it kind of makes you question about how you think about these kind of things too, because you don't really know what you would do in that situation if you were her. But she does like still have this line. Like the perfect example was when she goes into the dean's office with Connie Britton's character, and like she puts out this like terrible situation and scenario to
Yep.
her, but it never was real. You know, it's just like, oh my god, like,
But she
but
made
you're
it
right, and
real.
you're riding that with her. Like, yeah, she made it
Yeah.
like, oh my god. But yeah, no,
Or
you're
even
so
the
right. She's
friend in the hotel
totally
room.
that.
Right.
Right.
Like she
Yeah.
goes to
Oh my
these
god.
lengths to make these people
Yeah.
feel the fear and the panic that
Well,
Mhm.
that a victim would go through,
and
to
the
just turn around and
filmmaker
go, well, thank God it didn't happen to you.
does
Yeah.
that for us too, because we don't
Yeah.
know these things as we're going either. They don't tell us.
Mhm.
It's not like some movies where they're like, they don't tell the characters, but they'll tell us.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't
It's really
tell anybody.
smart in
So,
that way.
right.
Yeah. It's like for me, like Emerald Fennell, who wrote and directed it. I mean, she's an excellent writer. She worked on Killing Eve as well, and she's definitely, there's always this thing in like screenwriting to like not to like basically trust your audience. Like your audience is smarter than you think they are.
Hmm.
And this is a perfect example of that. Like she doesn't lay it all out for you. You know, she like gives you just enough to help you like turn the wheels in your own head and figure it out.
So this is going to be a movie that it's going to be near impossible for us to talk about without spoiling. Maybe not the very end, but at least a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, maybe not the end, because
That's a big part. But
the end's a lot.
but even some character pieces we're gonna have to get into
Right,
some of
right.
that. So to start, not to start to break down some of these characters, but the one person who was the big standout to me, other than Carey Mulligan, because she did brilliant, is Beau
Mhm.
Burnham. I keep falling deeper in love with this guy. He's fantastic. I loved him on screen. I liked that he brought a little sense of his own humor to this part. Um, Charming as hell. Plays a good doctor. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to work with my kid though.
No, that's not quite what I meant. I'm talking about the actor playing the role, doing a great job. Beau brought it in this movie for an actor or for a comedian, and I think that it'd be nice to see him in more. Um, I don't know. I didn't know he was in it when I walked into this movie. I knew the base premise, and
Oh,
I knew
okay.
Carey Mulligan was in it,
Mhm.
but I didn't know anybody else was in it. I just knew that it looked interesting. The
Mm.
plot got me. I was like, let's take a look. Um, this, in the same sense as Jojo Rabbit, does not. There are light moments that are funny and even rom-commy to some degree, that feel right, and then there are other moments that are dark and definitely touch upon, like we said before, the idea of rape and even taking advantage of people when they're drunk, when you can quote unquote excuse that kind of crap. They get really
Mhm.
into that, saying that, hey, just because a girl's drunk doesn't mean you could just take advantage. And that's where they get into the nice guy thing. And they show several actors, big actors, that played those parts, and they played them well. Including when, oh boy, Christopher Mintz-Plasse
Yeah.
plays the guy you expect him to. He's just a kind of a nerdy guy, and when she
Mhm.
says, oh yeah, you're better than some of them. At least you didn't take advantage of me while I was asleep or passed out. You could see
Yeah, you
him,
woke me up.
right. You could see him feel sick in that scene. Like you could see the sickness building in his stomach as he felt more and more guilty and put on the spot for the kind of crap he was really doing.
Mhm.
And I think that highlighted a lot of things that are true for women, period. And I'm not going
Yeah.
to speak too much on it because it's not my place, but I can definitely tell you that it shouldn't be happening. And this is something that needs to be more heavily highlighted. And this film does a very, very good job of highlighting that.
Yeah.
And calling people out, people who are enablers, people who are
Oh
that
yeah,
turned
like
a
Connie
blind
Britton's
eye.
character was an enabler. Yeah, and like
Mhm.
Brie
Alison Brie
Larson,
was another one.
or
Like
Brie
yeah,
yeah, Allison Brie. I meant.
Alison.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, there's definitely those kind of things, and it's talking about like that Connie Britton scene is like huge because it talks about the larger problem that's been a reality, where like she can't take all these like accusations at face value. She has to like give these young men the benefit of the doubt because we wouldn't want to ruin their lives, right? But let's go ahead and I mean, she totally didn't even remember Nina, you
right.
know, and but then all of a sudden when there's that turn and it's suddenly her daughter in that very same situation, all of a sudden, it becomes very real to her, and she's like, oh, like the nightmare is real, and like everything she just said is not, it's holding the water. So it's like that's a very real kind of scenario. All these schools and stuff have turned a blind eye to those things because they didn't want to ruin a young man's life, and that's kind of where the title comes from. Is promising young woman. It comes from a Emerald Fennell came up with it because there's a case where someone had mentioned a young man who was, accused of sexual assault or whatnot. They referred to him as a promising young man. So
Mhm.
that's where she came up with the title for this film.
And they go into
I,
that into
Yeah.
depth with her discussion, and they do specifically call out all the frat boy crap and the
Mhm.
constant excusing that that we do with women when it comes to, well, you shouldn't have, which that sentence shouldn't be said, let alone finished, with anything
Mhm.
to the victim. And it definitely points out a lot of that hypocrisy, especially when it comes to people in power, people with privilege, and people who
Mhm.
may have a potential career in front of them.
All right.
While forgetting about the two women who were completely neglected heading in the same career path. Uh, anyway, yeah, this is a heavy topic. Marvelite,
well,
you were going
Yeah.
to say something.
yeah. So this topic always bothers me, because there is this mentality when you have it brought up where there are people that go, well, that there are times where there are false accusations, and it's almost as if they're making excuse for people
Mhm.
addressing this type of behavior.
Right.
And and they touched on that where it's like, do you know how many accusations that we get? And it's like, no. Yes, we get that there are some times where it's, it could be regret or something else, but you don't just dismiss something
Right.
because you think that's the norm. That's not the
Mhm.
norm. There are instances where there are people that the odds of a person being assaulted or being taken advantage of, are extremely higher for women than they are for men. And I would almost say that the rate for I wish at this point where you talk about having statistics with you, but it's like, just because yes those things could be falsely reported does not mean that you give it a pass for everything that
Yeah.
happens.
Right.
And the
Right.
fact that they touched on the point of where it's like she asked for it. I'm sorry, I don't care
Yeah.
what person in this world. You don't just say somebody asked, like they asked for, well, she shouldn't have been drinking, she shouldn't have done this.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's just all that is gaslighting and victim shaming.
Mhm.
And it's like you could take that in everything in life. So
Let,
we should just, you shouldn't have had your store open, that's why you got robbed.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have money in the registers, or
Right.
else that's why you got robbed.
right.
Mhm.
You shouldn't have nice things because that way people wouldn't want to rob you.
Um,
You can't add that logic to anything else in this world and
Right.
then think it's okay, but we'll do it for that.
Mhm.
91% of victims of rape and sexual assault are female. 9% are male, with nearly 99% of perpetrators being male. And that's, of course,
Mhm.
excluding those in non-binary and or
That's all like yeah,
that's
and that's all
Justice
reported.
Department. That's Justice Department stuff, and that's again reported. And they say
Yeah.
only 1 in
Yeah.
4 are reported, and that statistic might
Yeah.
even be low.
So
So
right.
it gets
Yeah.
bad. Like it gets bad to the point where there are the rest of us men who are not tolerating this bullshit need to be standing up and saying a hell of a lot more. And this is
Yeah.
why I'm glad to be doing a movie like this on this show, because the three of us stand here and say, fuck this shit. Sorry. I think it's important we kind of put our foot down and say, if you're not on board with this on this show, that's definitely not your kind of show. Anyway, that being said, this movie is brilliant. You said, Mr. Marvelite, that I think, I want to quote you, but you said something about this movie had no business being this good because you expected it to just be kind of almost like a simple plot, but it kind of blew you out of the water. I felt like they took a kind of a typical Lifetime movie plot and ramped it up to like an elevated level with really good dialogue, but the base concept, you could see this movie on Lifetime every year. They'll remake it.
And it will mess you up at the end. You will not expect the ending. It's just I was not prepared for it.
And we won't.
There were some things I was expected, like with Beau Burnham, but not with anything else that happened after that point.
Now, at what point did you guys call the Beau Burnham thing?
When he was in the coffee shop talking about like people from the past.
Yeah, I think I started to get
like
real suspicious.
I really thought, at that point
he was too nice.
What?
Yeah,
and like once I found out he was like, once they kind of like were, exactly, like we're talking about how they knew each other a little bit, I was like, oh, there may be a connection there.
He mentioned the boys. He was like, the boys,
right?
And I was like, oh shit, he was one of the boys, and he's trying not to pretend like he was because he's picking up on a girl.
And I have to say, like, this again, like with Jojo Rabbit, is another one of those films that I cannot talk enough about. It was like my favorite film of 2020. I was like very excited when it first came out. I was like there when it first opened. I've seen this one a few times now, and I literally just watched it last night again, and still had the same impact for me too. I was just like, I loved what Mr. Marvelite said. It was like, had no business being that good. I'm like, hell yeah, that's like, it's so like, even when the credits rolled last night, I was like, god damn, that movie's good. Like, just, man, I love it. It is, I would classify it as like a dark comedy.
It is
like, has the dark comedy elements, and because there are definitely some like funny moments in it. We're just like, oh man.
So it's like Very Bad Things meets a really good rom-com, but with some real elements, with some very real elements.
Yeah, exactly. And like, there's all these like great things of like these different visual metaphors of like being an angel or being angelic. If you notice, like,
there's the blue halo,
a couple of shots. Yeah, there's that blue halo where she almost looked like a saint, and is like very much framed, that she was centered frame, and there's that blue circular design behind her, and she's kind of looking down like that, and like doing something. And then there's like a lot of times when she has like what appears to be wings behind her, whether it be on the couch, with when she first watches the video, and there's like these wings that shaped behind her because that's the way the couch was, and her headboard even had wings shaped, and she was always centered, framed.
She was always center framed, which is really odd in a film because most of the time
it was great.
We're all center framed because this is a podcast, so we should be centered framed. But most movies, you're going to be framed off to the side. Now, okay,
there's a lot of like different, like they give more headroom a lot of times too with certain shots too. So
I kind of want to rewatch it for that because they did make you uncomfortable with the way they pieced the film together.
There's a lot of different
some of the editing and the framing absolutely made you uncomfortable.
Also, and there's this one shot I love too, where she was when she first meets Alison Brie and was like getting her drunk, and there's like that turn when she reveals kind of like why she's really there. It's the only time they do this, and it's like a low angle shot on I'm forgetting her name, on Carey Mulligan, and there's all those circular lights on the ceiling, but only one of them was red, and it's right behind Carey Mulligan, and again it's like creating this red halo around her, and it's like it's a very like, I mean, it's very impactful and there for a reason. I just love that.
Which is interesting because typically that's considered a no-no. You wouldn't
Yeah.
want that there, but for an artistic and stylistic reason,
Oh
you
no,
do
yeah,
want it
I
there.
love that stuff. Yeah.
But in photography, you would say no. You'd want that over, in the empty spot of the shot,
Oh yeah.
or whatever it
Yeah.
is. Can we talk
Yeah.
about her parents for a minute? Clancy
Yeah.
Brown,
Clancy
who is a
Brown.
genius, and then of course, where is she? I always forget her name. Jennifer Coolidge.
Never Coolidge.
They were
Again,
so
like,
out
I saw
of
her-
touch, dude.
Yeah.
They were so out
Well,
of
when I-
touch.
I'm sorry. When I first saw her, I was like, "No man, I want a hot dog real bad." Like that was the first thing in my head.
She is known for
And
her
there's
Legally
like a-
Blonde role.
Yeah.
So-
Well, there's a joke too that Beau Burnham makes about her mom being hot,
Right.
and that was like, and
The Stifler
they said
joke.
that was kind of a reference. Yeah, exactly. That was a reference to that,
Right.
basically. But and then there's another instance of like just like Jojo Rabbit, these like supporting characters having such little screen time but being so impactful in the film.
Well,
They're really great.
I love the scene about her birthday. I think that was a standout
Yeah,
scene for me because
yeah.
her mom. I'm sitting there because now I'm a parent and I'm like, if my kid, I gave them a present, and they didn't know it was their birthday, I would freak out. I'd be like, "What is wrong with you?" I knew exactly what Jennifer Coolidge's Susan's character was going through. I was like, "Yes, why wouldn't you know that? You're 30 too. It was her 30th freaking birthday. That's a big
Yeah.
one.
Right.
It wasn't like 32 or she had been
totally.
up all night or something. She's literally going out every single night, being weird, and they don't know. And why is she living at home after med school? All those were valid reasons. I understood where they were coming from, and then they got weird. Those are some weird folks.
Yeah.
They were out of touch with humor, which I loved. It made them kind of adorable. But they
Right.
were like a great couple, but I don't know. It was weird. Clancy was barely in it, but I
Yeah.
love that dude. Sorry. I could talk about
He's
it.
so good. I mean, like that one little moment when she's first going out to see Beau Burnham, and she's like wearing that nice dress, and he like leans out, and says like, "Sweetie, just want to say you look very pretty." There's that one. There's just that little, such a little moment, but I just,
Well, you got to
and
see her.
she takes it in.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And
That
like,
was her.
Yeah.
I think that's the only time
Yeah.
we see the real Cassandra from before.
Oh yeah, totally. And there's this whole like kind of like moment in the whole film where there's like a montage and like a series of seeing her finally enjoying life,
With Ryan.
only to have exactly, only to have it like
Yeah, and that statement from the
Take
dad
a
at the
turn
dinner,
again.
he's like, "We miss Nina, but we
Yeah.
really missed you."
yeah,
That hurt.
yeah.
Like this movie
That-
will
that
punch
whole- I
you.
was- Yeah.
Ugh.
That whole dinner table scene was really great. There's like probably the most humor in that one scene was there. It was really funny.
Yeah, man, this
Can
movie.
we talk about Alfred Molina for
Yeah.
a minute?
Yes, we haven't even touched
Yeah.
on Alfred
And
Molina.
he's uncredited in the film.
Yeah,
Isn't-
that
it's
isn't.
so
He is.
interesting.
He really is uncredited.
Yeah.
I'm like going down the list here. He's not there. Interesting. Yes, please bring him up because his performance is.
It was important. Yeah.
It's what I was so surprised of. The filthy lawyer was the only one that
Right.
and you understand like that even that short amount of time that you have him on screen like tells you so much that his law firm's sole purpose is to harass and to find dirt on young women
Yeah.
to scare them out of a lawsuit or for pressing charges. And like the basically what he said is like he's like and this is why and for those of you if you're young in the chat and you're on here, first of all thank you for being here, but second of all I want to tell you this: be very careful what you post on the internet. And this was a very big lesson in this movie. He basically makes this comment where it used to be really hard because you would have to sift through people's garbage to find dirt on them, or you would have to go and interview people. But now you can go and find one drunk Instagram picture or one Twitter post, and that will turn the jury against you in a heartbeat. And basically from that you realize Nina, it's not what happened to Nina, the initial assault that has got Cassandra on this path. It is the blind eye that everyone around, the accusations that they put on her, the lengths that they went to destroy her name to protect this young man. And that and for her when she came to him and this lawyer is they're claiming it. You know, he realizes that he has done wrong and he's repentant, and that the law firm thinks he's having a mental break. And this is it was probably the most impactful because it's the first time, it's the only time you see her forgive at all in this film.
Right. Yeah. Like,
Well, that's
I
her.
mean, obviously, she wasn't expecting it either. She was expecting to kind of like, she like all these other scenarios she's gone in. She's gone in with like she's been fully in control, right? And then all of a sudden, Alfred Molina, he shows remorse and like is just eating away at his soul, and he like physically shows that towards her, and she doesn't know what to do for the first time. You
And the
know,
fact that he told the secretary to give his address out to anyone who asked for it,
right,
because he
right,
knew this was coming.
hmm
He knew he deserved it,
right,
you know, for even
yeah,
playing the part in what he did.
yeah,
So, and for him being the one person that remembered her name and remembered
yeah. Oh my God,
specifically
yeah,
her,
that was huge.
I just got chills thinking.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally, yeah, so good,
She was
yeah. And then
frightened only twice. No, she
yeah,
was frightened only once, and I think it was in his scene.
really that
Um,
movie, yeah, or that scene, yeah,
because of the fact that he kept saying, "Well, they judged me psychotic. They sent me on sabbatical," and then he
mhm,
approaches her erratically, and she
yeah,
jumps a few times until
yeah.
he
Well,
starts
I
to
think,
confess. You know,
yeah, and I think too that's because she all of a sudden like the control wasn't in
right?
her hands anymore. She
Right.
felt like she knew what she was gonna do, and then it's changed on her. And like, yeah, she was totally scared then.
He did become
And
the
then like
wild
when,
card.
yeah,
And
exactly.
also, if you find out, if you think about it, not only did she forgive him, but she also gave him a path of redemption at the end. And I
Right.
Yep.
thought
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
was so
I was
profound.
just gonna mention
Right.
that. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Once you see that envelope, you're like, oh damn, like
So,
Yep.
it's it's about to happen. Yeah.
man, this movie, it is so. I didn't expect. What you said, Marvelite, really does ring true. Like I walked
Yeah.
into this going, oh, this is gonna be another, whatever, movie. And then of course, as the actors start showing up on screen, I'm like, oh wow, that's a big actor. Oh, and, like, I just didn't expect
Yeah,
all
they're
these
just
names,
everyone's so amazing. Yeah.
right? But
Yep.
Yeah.
the fact that this is exactly what's been happening since the Me Too movement, still, even with Me Too,
And before.
right, and
Yeah.
especially before. And then I know that Rachel mentioned that this was the Brock Turner case, and this is taken from the headlines in that sense, from not just the Brock Turner case, but many other cases that are just like it, where people are still saying the girl should X whatever it is,
Mhm.
and that,
Yeah.
like I said before, that sentence needs to stop being uttered. A person should be able to walk down the street nude without being assaulted. That's the whole idea, is that they were talking about consent and assault and crossing lines. If somebody wants to be nude and show off their body, we can talk about the legality of all of that, but that
Right. But
shouldn't lead to assault. Like,
Yeah.
so at all, like, period. We're all born
yeah.
naked, so the idea that some people could wear less clothing and that should automatically, we the boys shouldn't have to deal with that, bullshit.
Right.
Control yourself. Learn how to be a better human. And if you can't, then hopefully your kids are, because we don't need it. We don't need this kind of shit in our world anymore, because, I want to do more. And this movie is just a small little sliver of what needs to be done. And I think everybody needs to watch this movie.
Right.
And much like, I
Mhm.
brought this up before, this is much like Don John in the way that this movie was advertised. Don John was advertised as kind of a bro movie, like, Jogo Levy was going to be this great, man's man, and he's going to get all the ladies, and that's how the preview showed it, several times. But then you go watch the movie, and that movie is not about that. It's about porn addiction. It's about
Mhm.
respect of women and respecting yourself, enough to not
Yeah.
necessarily have to compare women to fantasy women. And it was real. And I
Mhm.
heard a lot of complaints after that movie
Oh,
from
totally.
dudes going, what the hell kind of movie was that? And I'm like, oh, you obviously didn't get the point. And
Yeah.
I have a
Right.
feeling that this movie is going to do the same thing, that the people that need to hear it the most are going to ignore this film.
Oh yeah, and a lot of them did. There was already a lot of that kind of talk
Right.
out there. I do have to mention something that we haven't really covered in this, and so
Please.
this is another kind of trigger warning thing. regarding suicide. Um, is that is we've mentioned like what is driving Carrie Mulligan's character, and I will say like the effect of her friend committing suicide is a huge part of what's driving this, and like why she is so consumed by it. Um, like I'm not going to get into it, but I just know firsthand exactly what that kind of like obsession, that like kind of control, something like that can have on you, and that intimate effect. Because there's like the statistic around suicide is that it intimately affects at least 6 people. From someone who does commit suicide. So that was for me that was a huge part of what was driving her to like do this. Because she can't come to terms with the fact that her friend is gone and she hasn't been able to let go of that, and so she feels this is. I mean, like Marvel, you made a good analogy. That's like a very much Batman, Bruce Wayne kind of thing. Where she feels she has to like find justice for her friend because it wasn't properly found. So,
Thank you again for the trigger warning. I myself have dealt with suicide personally on a couple levels, and it's hard for me to think about it. So I try to think about these kinds of things shallow in order to get through them. Unfortunately, that's how we all deal with our things. I think. And again, this movie does touch on some pretty ridiculously heavy topics. You got to keep that in mind before watching it. But if you can handle those two things, it's 100%
I will say
worth a
too,
watch.
it's not like a huge, it's not like a focus of the film, but it is definitely an element of her character. I feel that is driving her.
I agree. Anything else you guys want to say about this? Because we have the show to talk about, as well as, pardon me, wow, as well as Sean's pre-review, which I'd like to get to as well.
Oh yeah.
Because we can always, some of the chat that's being said on as well, I think is important. It's just not being said by us. But again, I don't want to necessarily speak for others in this case, because I'm just speaking as an ally, and that's the best I can do.
Yep.
So I'm going to give this movie a 10 just because it was a jaw dropper. I liked the whole thing, and I liked how it made me feel. In the sense that it can makes you feel uncomfortable, and I think we all need to feel a little more uncomfortable around these topics so that we're willing to discuss them, because it's gonna be uncomfortable. It's important that we put ourselves in those positions. It's true about both films tonight. They both put us in uncomfortable positions.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'd say it's a 10. Younger me, 12-year-old me, would not have been allowed to watch this movie.
You're right.
Yeah, you're right.
Totally.
Had I snuck it, I don't know. I think this movie would have profoundly affected my life. I was raised by a cis white male who was a first sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the patriarchy in my house. So it's taken on years of unindoctrination, and I'm far from perfect by this point. But I don't know. If I had snuck it, I probably would have viewed my father and a lot of other men very differently growing up. So kind of the way I view them now, I guess. That being said, as witty as it was, I probably would have liked it. If I snuck it, I probably would have given it an 8. I'm going to put that out there. All the movie things.
Wow. Yeah, it's up there for me too. I'd have to say it's a 9.8 for me. Like I absolutely love this film and was floored by it the first time I saw it, and like every time I've rewatched it now, it's still just I'm still just blown away by how good it is. And yeah, it's just a really solid film, and I love what Emerald Fennell has done, and I really want to see more from her. Um, and it is kind of historic because of like regarding like the Academy Awards. I think it was one of the only times that we've had multiple women nominated for Best Director. This was the same year that Chloe Zhao won for Nomadland. So yeah, it's really incredible. I don't think as a 12-year-old I would have watched this. I think this would not have interested me. or would I have been allowed to watch it either. So, but yeah, I can't recommend this movie enough as well.
Mr. Marvelite.
I would definitely say, for me right now, a 10. I would agree. I probably wouldn't have been allowed. Well, I probably wouldn't have been allowed to watch it unless it would have been with my mom. And you said you grew up in the patriarchy. See, I grew up in a single parent home. It was my mom, and so for me, it's kind of turned out. I don't know how you view men now, but let me explain to you. From being in a single parent home, with a single mom, I tend to work better under women leadership. I also have a natural distrust for men in leadership, and I will try. In past, I've noticed that I've tried to seek men's approval, but at the same time, I don't ever trust, and I have like confidence issues when it comes to men leadership. So yeah, it would definitely be a 10 because I think it's a necessary topic. I feel blessed that I had a mom who gave me the opportunity to learn and understand things and to have an opinion that wasn't based off of patriarchy norms or anything like that. As you know as a man, I can completely understand where people and Ray, Lily, I would also say, I appreciate what you're saying, but at the same time, it's almost as if in this day and time, you have to automatically assume that men have bad intentions.
Right.
And at that point, let them surprise you by being a good guy, but never assume, because sometimes it's the ones who know how to play being a good guy that are the most dangerous. And, you know, that's where and we men get too much of a pass for locker room talk
Right.
or anything like that, and that's something that's unacceptable. And as men, if we're going to say that as men in leadership or in society, we should hold ourselves to a high standard to be the proponents for equality, and to make sure people are accepted and protected. And if we're going to do that, then we have to step up. But I think the way Cassandra approached this men in the film was kind of like you know she told the president or the dean of the college. She said,
Mm,
thankfully, as opposed to you, I have a natural distrust for men.
yeah.
And so she didn't put the daughter in a precarious situation because she
Mhm.
knew what would happen.
Right.
All right.
And I think, that's the thing, is like, don't be so naive. Don't be so focused on, and there's another thing, because we talk about like sexual assault, about people being taken advantage of in an intoxicated state. But also there's also a judgment impairment, because if you feel emotionally attached to an individual, as in my relationship with my wife, um if I would have tried to pressure her for any type of physical affection
Mhm.
for the purpose of her showing me that she loves me, I would be wrong for that,
Yeah.
because that is not a physical. The physical interaction is not a requirement of emotional attachment,
Right.
and
Mhm.
we have to learn to get rid of that.
Yeah.
It's like
Sorry, I'm
asking
sorry.
kids to hug people when they don't want to, but
Well,
it's
yeah,
expensive.
exactly.
Kind
No,
of a
Exactly,
thing.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, it's
No,
like
totally.
people assume that, oh, because people think like consent doesn't exist once you're married or something.
Or
It's
no,
like, what are
consent
you
is an all the
talking
time
about?
for everyone
Yeah.
thing. Even with my
Yeah.
daughter, if she shows me she's not interested in playing tickle, I stop immediately because but
Yeah.
then she'll grab my hand and she'll like make me tickle her side. That's consent. She's saying, let's play tickle. Let's tickle.
Mhm.
But as soon
Yeah.
as she's like, and pushes me away, I stop. Because even at almost 3 years old, she needs to understand what consent is and that she has a right to say no
Yep.
to
Right.
anyone invading her space as a person, period.
Mhm.
Flat out. And I'm glad I'm learning that now before she's older and we can teach it to her while she's young. That being said, we do have a pre-review, and we're going to have about 20 minutes to talk about the first episode of Why the Last Man, which I'm really excited about because this is a great comic and a great show so far. That being said, we're going to move over to the Real Study Theater and let Sean take the next 3.5 minutes. We'll be right back.
How's it going, Real
No My Little
Study
Pony this time.
viewers? I'm Sean, and I'm back with this week's pre-review of all the movies coming to streaming and theaters this week. First, I want to start off this week by saying thank you to all the movie things for covering me last week. Much appreciated, but I am glad to be back. So let's jump into theaters this week with Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. Tom Hardy, Woody Harrelson, Venom, Carnage, like this. I'm excited for this. This is going to be really good. I'm intrigued to see how this will ever integrate into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I really hope that happens. Yeah, so Venom 2, I mean, this is this is number one this week, especially for us comic book nerds, and I'm ready for this. Also this week, Nick Kroll, Bill Hader, Bette Midler, Chloe Grace Moretz, Snoop Dogg, they all return to the screen in Addams Family 2. For the animated movies, I really enjoyed that first one. It was so much fun. I've watched it probably half dozen times, so yeah, I'll be checking this one out for sure. One that should be really interesting this week is The Many Saints of Newark, starring Alessandro Nivola and Michael Gandolfini. We are going to learn the beginning of Tony Soprano. And let me tell you, I loved The Sopranos. I thought it was absolutely incredible. I don't even have a problem with the ending. I think for a show like that's a hit the nail on the head ending. For a show like that, it fits. So the idea to get a movie to show how he grew up, idolizing his uncle, this is gonna be a home run. Gotta watch it. This week on Netflix, we get a suspense thriller, The Guilty, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, who is a 911 operator who gets a call from a girl that seems to be kidnapped, and the details get very fuzzy and maybe things aren't as they seem. I don't know. It looks like it's pretty good. Apparently the entire thing is shot inside a 911 call center. Those type movies just jive really well. It'll be good. Getting in the Halloween spirit, Amazon Prime brings us Bingo Hell. This is part of their Welcome to Blumhouse movie series that they have coming out for Halloween. Looks like a small town with a bunch of senior citizens who really love bingo, and all of a sudden a new bingo hall opens up, and it's got kind of a Needful Things vibe to it. I don't know. It looks pretty good. I like horror movies, even if they're a little bit cheesy. So yeah, bring on the Welcome to Blumhouse series. This sounds fun. Disney Plus brings us Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales this week. I love these Lego movies. I really do. They're all so much fun. They're well acted. Their stories are entertaining for both adults and children. Not to mention it's Star Wars. So yeah, bring on some terrifying tales from Star Wars. I am very excited for this. And that'll wrap up this week's pre-review. I'm Sean, and I'll see y'all next week.
All right, guys, we are back and here at the poster wall because we are going to be doing Why the Last Man for the wrap up. And then here in December, I know that's only a couple months away, but in December, we will be reviewing The Matrix Resurrection, the fourth installment of the Matrix movies. And I don't know, maybe we will or will not revisit the whole thing. I don't know. I've seen them enough times. I don't need to, because I'm a fan. That being said, moving back over to the drive-in here, but it's up to you guys. We could always talk about them in, the whole or the little. That being said, Why the Last Man, episode 1. So this is a Brian K. Vaughan comic book, who, if you don't know, Brian Vaughan is quite the writer within the comic book world, known for even some great things like The Runaways. So great author. And also an executive producer on this show. By the way, forgot to mention this, Margot Robbie executive produced Promising Young Woman, by the way.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty awesome. This show takes a very different approach than the comic book right out the gate. And I was very shocked by that. Not in a bad way, but it definitely, it doesn't take the same format. Which I thought was interesting. I don't know if either of you have read Why the Last Man, but it definitely takes a different format. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I didn't read the comic. I think I've read maybe one of them, and I don't know. I just wasn't super into it. It wasn't. It was. It just at that time. It was just not something I was really ready to delve into.
Sure.
So that's just for me coming from it.
Okay. And Brian, did you read the comic at all?
No, not when it first came out, but I've been like getting back into it just for this show alone. So, and I've already noticed like how many changes there are and everything. But I, I also tend, I've actually kind of spoken about this too a little bit about adaptations, and I tend to like separate the mediums,
Sure.
and kind of understand like I take them for what they are within their own kind of format. So, but,
That's fair. That's fair. From my remembering the comic, and I have it right back there on the shelf, so I could stop being lazy and go back there and pull it. But it starts out in the future, in the time with Yorick, and running along with Ampersand and doing his thing.
yeah.
And we introduce ourselves to the female characters as we go, and then we get backstory on those characters. Versus the film or the show, which is just like, here are all the characters. And what we're going to get to watch is how they interweave themselves eventually to meet Yorick and Ampersand. And that's what I think is the approach. I don't think the approach is going to make a big difference. I think the story is still going to be impactful. And this episode, I think I felt as sick from this episode as I did from watching Promising Young Woman. I did not expect American Horror Story level gory episode.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Sounds like you guys weren't either.
No, it was not. I didn't really know what to expect. Really, I just knew. I mean, I knew very little going into it. So I was very blind. Yeah, definitely didn't expect that much. I knew there's going to be like a message for sure, a lot of underlying themes to talk about. But yeah, was not expecting this level.
I kept waiting for it because I could tell it was coming. But I've read I haven't read the entire comic, but I've read a good chunk, so I have a good idea. Vaughn's one of I have a lot of his stuff back here just because I like his writing. I think that for a TV show, one, they dropped an F-bomb. I was impressed by that. Two, there was almost nudity, which I know FX has been pushing that threshold for a long time, and then the acting was pretty freaking on point for a TV show. I was impressed. It drew me in. Specifically, everything to do with Diane Lane and all the characters surrounding her, and then Yorick and his girlfriend. The scene with him and his girlfriend as they're talking about going to Australia. I was impressed by their exchange. Like, it felt very natural and very real to me. Anyway, that stood out to me. And then, of course, Ampersand's cute. Can't go wrong with a monkey. So, what are you guys' initial impressions of how this show's going to go? Why don't we say Mr. Marvelite?
I like how it balanced kind of like between the time frames, just to kind of give you an idea of where he is in the present time as all of the events have happened, and then you have this bounce back to the day of, and you're getting more of a balance of who these characters are and where they're coming from, and you're realizing that a lot of the things that are happening are going to have no bearing on the future per se. You're basically more just emotionally establishing yourself with the characters. I was not expecting the children, and that, as a father, that kills me. I was not prepared for that. The one scene with the mother that is running carrying the little boy, like that, and then like the mother going into the bedroom to wake up the father and the son, like
oh my god,
like it's visceral. It really tries to just now, and mind you, like you're talking about like FX, the F-bomb and stuff like that. FX has been doing a lot of like mind freaking stuff for a while, and I mean, I just go back and think about Legion and like the risks that they took with Legion, and then you come back to this, and you're it messed me up. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't interested in the comic book, and I'm really not even sure if I still want to go back to the source material, kind of for the same reason that Brian does. But I definitely am now emotionally invested in these characters for what they've gone through,
Right.
because I want to understand more. I love that freaking monkey right now. But it's just it's definitely interesting, like just seeing like. I love the exchange between it was Emily, I think, the congresswoman, and the president, where she calls him out and they're able to have that the discourse, that exchange between the two. And he's like, I miss being friends. And she's like, in 2.5 years, we can be friends.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like the next day, all of this happens. It's just, it was very intense. I liked it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
about
no,
you?
I'm like,
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm totally on board, like right away, like from just like the first 10 minutes alone, I was on board with it. And yeah, and right away, there's all these little things that they're kind of all these seeds they're planting, um, and kind of like for you to like help you kind of anticipate things, but also like they kind of make things, they twist them in a way that you weren't really expecting.
Like
Like
the
there's all these,
ambulance?
yeah, oh my god, oh damn, I did, yeah, that I definitely didn't see that coming either. I was like, okay, um, yeah, like that whole thing was just like,
Where is this
I
going?
mean, yeah, but also she's, I mean, she basically committed this crime, this huge crime, and now like no one's gonna know about it. No one's gonna find out.
So we
It
get
doesn't
to
matter.
explore her
Whoa.
character's psyche
Yeah,
with this
yeah,
guilt from this crime,
and
which I
it's
thought was brilliant for an episode 1.
yeah,
This
totally. I
pilot,
was
if
like,
this is a pilot,
whoa,
although I don't know, do pilots even work the same way anymore? Because it doesn't feel like it. It feels like with shows like this where they've preset it and they've just determined they're doing it, and we
right,
don't ever see what would be considered a pilot anymore. You might still see it in some shows, but it doesn't feel like it with this kind of show. This show knew what it
right,
needed to
like,
do to hook your ass, and it
mhm,
does. It does.
yeah, no, yeah, I totally am on board, and yeah, definitely, and ampersand is definitely like giving me anxiety because he keeps like doing stuff, and like I've watched a couple other episodes now too, and so it's like stop, just stay with Yurik, because he keeps doing things and like getting Yurik in a kind of like situations now. It's like, oh my god, there's definitely some more going on where it's just like this monkey just needs to stop. I mean, I love him, but just keep him in that damn carrying case. Like, man,
To speak to what
great.
Mr. Marmalade had said, that it would be, there's definitely a note that if all the men in the world died, and if you don't know the premise of this show, sorry, all the men in the world die.
Yeah,
All the men but 2. And I'm talking about
yeah,
men.
everyone with a Y
Every
chromosome.
male
Yeah,
species on the planet
mhm,
perishes. So that includes dogs, cats, bears.
yeah,
Doesn't matter. And I'm assuming even like praying mantises. But a monkey with
mhm,
with Y chromosomes and a human
yeah,
male are the
and
only 2
Yurik.
survivors
Yeah,
that we know of.
yeah,
And the world falls to pieces. And there was a mention of how that says something about the patriarchy, and it absolutely does. But at the same time, if we said if humans were asexual and 1/2 of humans disappeared from the earth at the same time, all societies would crumble because that's too many people leaving from important positions at the same time. So I
mhm.
understand that there's definitely going to be commentary about the patriarchy, and it's important to know that. But I think
Oh
our
yeah, yeah,
societies are structured in such a way that if that many people left us, it would be hard to adjust. I think we could get back, but it would be hard to
right,
adjust.
Yeah.
right, yeah,
Yeah. It bothered me. I think we were talking about this in the chat beforehand. It just, I felt like, because when you get farther into the episodes, because I accidentally skipped 2 to go to 3 for a second, and I had to go back to 2. And we're really kind of just talking about the first episode. There's this idea that the power grid's going down, infrastructure is failing because there's no men, and it's like, okay, my first thought was that is really chauvinistic to think that there aren't women in these industries that would not be able to pick up and do what the men were doing. and
mhm.
and then I was thinking, like, we need more women in STEM, because when if
Yeah,
this if it,
right,
it's almost at the point, like with the pandemic and stuff, like when this does happen and we're all gone, you know you know women don't necessarily need us, and they can figure it out, because in my
mhm,
mindset it would almost be like, uh I know of every there's not a single industry where I don't know that we have women that are doing those things. There may not be as many, and that's a problem. But I don't think the world would have collapsed that way. And then, Snippets made the comment, it's more of the fact that the amount of people that are gone that, would cause those things to break down. And at that point, I guess I do understand, but it really bothered me that was the first thing that the first vibe I'm picking up from the show, going into episode 3. So
Yeah, and you're definitely not alone there, because like a lot of people have kind of felt that sentiment too, that I've heard, from other people. Yeah, and for me, it's just there's going to be a lot of stuff that they're going to touch on. I mean, there's even things like with transgender roles being kind of touched on in this as well. There's transgender friend that I don't remember the character's name, but the one we mentioned about Mrs. Crime in the ambulance, she has a friend who is also transgender.
Hero.
So that's an interesting, yeah, yes, and so that's an interesting like aspect. And they're like traveling along, and everyone assumes it's because the transgender man. So immediately, like, kind of like you see the reactions from the other women as they are traveling across the country, kind of thing. So a lot of stuff to discuss. Obviously, the patriarchy, and just gender roles in general, and just so much. I mean, like I'm not a parent, but like that those moments too, were like the children, like the little boys and stuff, were, oh my god, like it.
Had it been a
hit me as
girl,
well. I mean,
I have 2 girls, no boy, and so I understand where Marvelite's coming from. Had it been a boy that they were talking, or a girl that we were talking about, I would have been I wouldn't have been able to get back up off the floor, because it would have been too real for me, because my imagination is sharp, and I don't like it sometimes because it gives me anxiety with how somebody can describe something to me a little bit. So when the movie's showing me and I get to the audio especially, I can just walk right into that person's shoes very easily and just get destroyed. It's probably why I love movies, because they put me in a position where it doesn't take much for my mind to take that leap.
right.
Because I can make that leap without film, even with just a book or even just being told a story. So film, it just, maybe that's why I don't like bad film, because it doesn't allow me to take that leap. That could be me.
Well, it's as a parent, like becoming a parent has made it very difficult for me to watch certain films and these moments. Like I'll tell you, when I was a fresh father, I, for whatever reason, was going on, I think it was on Netflix or something, and there's the ABCs of Death, and there's this one scene where there's this home intruder, and the guy is on the phone with his wife, and this home intruder kills the wife, and then you hear the baby crying in the background, and the guy's like, hold on a minute, and he just puts the phone down and is walking up the stairs, and the guy is screaming on the phone to stop, and what the guy is doing. I stopped watching the movie at that point. I could not continue, and I have not ever finished that film because of that moment. And so,
and nobody be a jerk and redeem that, please. And I'm being genuine. That's not snarky. Let's not torture him.
It's just something as, and it's I probably could get through it, but I've never had a desire to go back to watch that film.
As you shouldn't, if you don't want to. In fact, we do, of course, with the movie redemptions that we do offer, we reserve the right to say no, obviously, because you could redeem something that we're just going to be like, we're not watching that. And even if you redeem The Room, there are stipulations about that. So we'll keep that out there. I knew I'd get a head shake from you.
That's not the same.
No, that's, and it's not the same. You're right. So far, I think the casting on this film, or this show, is brilliant. It's interesting to see Diane Lane do television, because she's always been primarily a film actress. But this kind of shows that we're still in the golden age of television, where you can cross paths and do commercials now because they pay enough. Actors will do what you want them to if you get that crisp checkout. But I would too. In fact, I'm going to do a TikTok question about this, but I wanted to sample it with the two of you. So this is a great question. If you were given the choice between acting in Fast and Furious 10 as the new villain with Vin Diesel, or you were given an opportunity to do an artsy, low budget film with, I don't know, somebody a little less flashy, I guess. So I don't know, like Christian Bale wanted to do an artsy film. But you're not going to make the paycheck from the artsy film. It's just going to be, you did this great piece with Christian Bale. Which would you choose?
I know right away it has nothing to do with the money. It's my acting ability. And I feel like I would definitely jump on the Fast and Furious thing because my acting ability doesn't really hinge upon whether that film's going to do well or not. Where this little intimate thing with Christian Bale, and plus if you're working with Christian Bale, even you better be on your game. So
he's going to push you.
I would have a little more, yeah, exactly. And I just have more flexibility, I think, with being an over the top villain.
Is the money a factor?
No, not for me. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, I'm the complete opposite of Brian, and Brian is kind of the reason why I feel this way. So when you guys did your live interview on TikTok, this is what went in my head. I would rather do the artsy film with Christian Bale because I would rather build that connection that would possibly help me with future contacts. Like because the idea, like that, the whole thing was where you said on the TikTok where you're like, it's not so much, how to get yourself in the films as you do something and then you get your reputation within that circle then means when they go to do something else they're like, hey, let's add that person to this. And the idea that being able to go into something with Christian Bale and kind of learn from him, and then if I could at least at some point build that relationship up, that could mean potentially more money than a career-ending villain role in
Right.
Career ending. I love that.
Now, I love that. No, that's great. That's perfect. I love that. I switched my answer to his.
So for me,
know my act. I've taken an acting class and I never want to do it again. Like this is why I know my acting ability would not be up there. But
so I imagine this scenario is the Jeff Goldblum Joey episode on Friends where he's trying to impress Jeff Goldblum's character and he has to pee, and so his pee angst is what gets him the role. I imagine that's how I would be around somebody like Christian. I don't think I would. I don't know if I could hold myself. I'd do it for the paycheck because then I could produce films I wanted and maybe eventually hire Christian Bale if I did it right. I'm willing to take the same gamble but the other direction because you could get on the other side of the camera with the money and stay on that side. Becoming a producer or working on camera techniques or whatever it may be. I could put myself through freaking film school. I could do that. Thank you for answering my ridiculous question. But it also makes you wonder what people's priorities are. I don't see anybody. Well, maybe I see somebody that we can raid. Maybe. I thought that Black Girl Marvel was still on, but she obviously...
No, she rated us at the beginning.
That's right. She did. I forgot she did that. And I did say thank you for that. What was that? Is somebody drinking tea?
Oh, no, that was me.
Oh, nice.
You went from a can to a glass. What are you drinking now?
Now I'm drinking chocolate
milk. Chocolate oat milk?
Yeah.
Chocolate oat milk. My mother-in-law drinks oat milk. It throws my brain. Because it just means you took a lot of oat and a lot of water, and you squeeze the oats. And
I didn't know you could milk an oat.
They do literally milk oats. In
Makes
order
really
to get
tiny hands.
Yeah, little I like that. I love that. That's brilliant. All right, I think we're just going to end the show this evening because we honestly don't have anybody that we can rate, and my chat isn't working anyway. This is why I've been less active with the chat. I apologize. You guys are awesome, though. Thank you for being here, everybody that is in chat. And again, I don't like calling people out. That's kind of rude.
Love you guys for hanging in there with a lot of the serious stuff too. So it's been,
and we want to touch on all these topics. We want to do it all. We want to touch all these films that are worth what we're talking about. So exactly.
I think also we were talking about some serious topics, and I think. We are so cautious as males to address them. And I think the point is, I think men need to talk about this more, but they need to understand that they're not the authority.
Right.
And I think that's the thing, we don't know everything. and if for us to claim it would be another issue. But we need to be willing to speak up, and and that's the thing. Everyone should be welcome here, and at the same time, never feel like we're like preaching down your throat about something.
Yeah,
100%. Oh, and we never mentioned Laverne Cox, and that seems wrong, considering that we did talk about. Oh, we did. No, I did mention Laverne Cox in talking about a trans actress and how she didn't feel like a trans.
Oh yeah, like it
woman,
wasn't
and
even,
she wasn't even addressed.
A thing, like mentioned.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I thought was
she
brilliant. As I
just
sit
a
here and
great
point it out,
actress.
of course, which is terrible, but
Yeah.
at the same time, recognition is also
Way to
very
go.
important.
We were doing so good until you said something.
I know, I'm terrible. Thanks for the great show,
let me
guys.
just say that bomb scene. We didn't even talk about that bomb scene. That was fantastic, by the way.
In Why the Last Man?
And why? Yes, and why?
Oh yeah,
it was.
That was
I agree.
fantastic. Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for being here, guys. Thank you, the two of you, my awesome and always wonderful, with lots of wonderful insight co-hosts, all the movie things, and Mr. Marvelite. Next week, we will have a Black Girl Marvel back, and we will have another pre-review with Sean. So look forward to that. And be aware, next week we will start our initial spooky month. So we're going to be doing a bunch of different horror movies. And we've tried to pick a bunch of stuff that these guys have never seen because they don't do a lot of horror movies. So
there's a lot I was saying, yeah. So
stay tuned
for some blind reactions, yeah.
and some anxiety-ridden shows. You guys have a great night from The Real Study. Good night.